What's up, everybody? It's John here from John Pep Fitness and Acceleration Fitness, and I've got another whiteboard video here talking about how to put on mass. All right, so this is something near and dear to my heart because my own story here. I started lifting. I was 125 pounds as an 18-year-old kid who just graduated high school. So I was 125 pounds. I was skinny. I was athletic. I was a wrestler. So I'd always kind of wanted to stay a little bit lighter. But at that point, my wrestling career was done, so then I wanted to gain a lot of weight, right? So I wanted to get big, get strong, because I was always smaller and weaker than the average person just because I was 125 pounds. So kind of my story here, over the next, 4 years, I put on a lot of weight. I was at my heaviest 181 pounds, and I stayed very lean all the way up until about when I got to the 181, like 175 plus. Then I started to get put on a little more body fat as I was bulking. And now I am down to, I sit consistently between 165 and 170, kind of fluctuates in there depending on how close I am to a powerlifting competition or whatnot, because I lift at 165. So I try to stay within that range, and I just feel better overall there. But I spent a lot of time trying to bulk up unsuccessfully, and then I spent a lot of time doing it successfully. So I learned a lot through this journey and what works, what doesn't work, and I kind of broke it down here into 3 sections, right? If you want to put on mass, right? So this is, a lot of people want to put on mass just like I did. They're small, they're weak, they just want to gain weight, right? Everybody wants bigger arms, every guy wants bigger arms, chest, all that fun stuff, right? So here is kind of what worked for me going through this. Now, broke it down here to nutrition, training, and recovery. Pretty simple, right? So our nutrition, what we eat, training is how we train in the gym, recovery is what you do out of the gym. That's kind of unrelated to the two, but also plays a role in it. So we're gonna start with nutrition. Now, when I started the bulking process, I guess you could say, I basically just focused on caloric surplus as just get in more calories than I burn, right? And for many, that is going to work because if you do want to put on mass, you probably have a very high metabolism. You're probably skinny and lean, so you don't have to worry as much about the actual macros, the protein, the carbs, the fats, right? Because it's not as important because your goal is just to put on mass. Now, weight loss, cutting down, show prep, all that stuff, that's a completely different story, and I'm not talking about that, okay? So don't get confused on that. Because I love the idea of macros for those kind of things, right? And we do that here at Acceleration for weight loss, and all that is macros. So don't confuse the two. This video is for people who are skinny and they want to gain weight, right? So we're going to do that, and you have a low body fat percentage to start with. So we're going to do that with a caloric surplus, right? Basically, eat more than you burn. Now with that, I said I didn't want to talk about the macros too much, but you have to make sure you have an adequate protein intake. Now, I always followed kind of the 1 gram per pound school of thought, and that seemed to work best. I mean, that seemed to work for me. If I got, for the most part, probably 1 to 1.3-ish, somewhere in that range. If I got any higher than that, I really didn't think that in myself that it really made a difference, but if I got lower than that, I did notice a difference in just recovery and in progress. So that was what I followed. I know there's a lot of different schools of thought. There's, lower protein, there's super high protein, there's moderate. So I would say I was kind of in the moderate range. I didn't stress about it too much. At times I did, but for the most part I didn't stress about it too much. The main thing I focused on was caloric surplus, because also I want to emphasize again is I have a very, very high metabolism, and my job is very active training people. So for the good portion of this bulk, I was, I started to be a trainer, so through about half of it, I was, on the floor training people for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and sometimes even 9 and whatnot, and I was always moving, so I was burning a lot as well. So I didn't necessarily have to worry about the other things as much. So just take that with a grain of salt. But nutrition, that's pretty much covers it. I mean, I didn't go crazy. I ate a lot more carbs than I eat now. So that was the difference there. But that kind of covers it. Just basically eat more than you burn. And how I figured it out was two ways. First, I didn't do any fancy equations or anything like that, right? So I set a point and ate that many calories, right? Say it's 3,000 calories. We'll just call it that, even though it's a little bit lower, a lot lower than what I was eating at the time. So 3,000 calories. Then I would do that for about a week or so, and I would watch the scale. I'd weigh myself each and every day, and I would look for trends, right? So trends, not little fluctuations based on water or anything like that, but I'd look for trends. If it started to trend up, then I kept it about the same. If it started to trend down or just stayed the same, then maybe I'd make a little adjustment, eat more, maybe 3,500, right? And I kept doing that and playing with it myself until I found what worked. And eventually, I got up to a point where I was eating like between 5,000 and 6,000 calories a day. Now, I don't necessarily recommend that for everybody. That's what kind of took me from about 170 to 181 pounds in about 3 or 4 months, and I don't really recommend that because it put on a lot of body fat that way as well. But I gained mass, right? So that was one thing that kind of worked for me. So each person is going to be different based on genetics, what you do for your workouts, what you do in your daily life, your job, if you're sedentary, what you do for fun, your hobbies. So everything's going to be different for each and every person. So all I can say without seeing you is, and working with you one-on-one, is you got to learn this process on your own. So weigh yourself and keep track of it, like with a graph, whether it's an app or Excel spreadsheet. It's very simple. Just make a little graph and then look for trends, right? If it's trending upward, that's what you want to do. Stick with it. If it's not moving or it's going down, then you have to make a change. And you can do that with carbs and proteins too, right? And fats. So all the macros you can do the same with, right? You can, maybe try a couple weeks of higher carb, maybe increase carbs a little bit, see what happens. Maybe drop the protein down a little bit, see what happens. And play with it that way. It's all an experiment. Like, you have to learn to do this on your own. It's not always a cookie cutter set thing where, you have to eat this many grams of this. I'm not a big fan of that kind of stuff because you don't learn as well as an individual personally what works for you. So that's just kind of up in my soapbox type of thing. But that is kind of the nutrition side of things, what took me there. Training. So basically, thinking about it, what put on mass is obviously lifting, but 3 things: consistency, progressive overload, and varying rep schemes. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to consistency. You have to lift consistently if you want to make changes in the muscle tissue of your body, right? You cannot go on and off and expect big results, okay? Plain and simple. Same with weight loss, same with, aesthetics, anything like that. You cannot be inconsistent with it and expect great results. So that's number 1. I was consistent, right? I lifted, I didn't miss a training session, right? And if I did have to miss it, I made it up. I made time for it. I went early in the morning at 4 a.m. I went late at night at 10 p.m. I made sacrifices that had to be made to do that, and it paid off. Then, progressive overload. I'm going to skip down to number 3. I'll come back to the rep schemes. Progressive overload. So, the concept of progressive overload is very simple. You should progress with the resistance, whatever that type of resistance is. You should make progressions as you go to make strength and hypertrophy gains, right? So, this is going to help you put on muscle. It's going to help you gain strength, get your numbers up, and just improve, right? So you have to be progressing. If you're going in and doing 185 on the bench press for 5 sets of 5 every single week, over and over again, every Monday, you're not going to get very far. It might work at first, but then you're going to run into a wall and you're not going to progress. So you've all seen that guy in the gym that does the same workout, that does the same reps, that does the same weight, right? Over and over and over again. Guess what? You come back in 5 years, if he's still there lifting and doing the same thing, he's not going to look any different, right? So you have to progressively overload. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. One, straight up, add weight, right? Pretty simple. Add 5 pounds next time you work out. Now, this works to a point until you get strong enough. If you're a beginner, it'll work, but past that, then it gets kind of tricky. So overload progressively. Now, once you get past the beginner part, you can kind of play with things. Overall volume, so total volume lifted. If you progress that, you can progressively overload in reps. Maybe you hit an AMRAP set at the end and you get 5. Then the next time you do it, you get 6, or 2 times from now you get 6. So that is still an overload, right? Or anything like that. You can do it with percentages. There's many ways to do that. That's not what the video is about, so I'm going to leave it at that. Excuse me, kind of got a little cold going on here or something. But consistency, progressive overload. Now rep schemes, there's a lot of kind of back and forth, I feel like, within the strength training world, whether it's bodybuilding, powerlifting, anything, just within fitness, right? There's a lot of back and forth. Well, this rep scheme is better. This study shows this rep scheme is better. No, this rep scheme is better. Guess what? There's many, many ways to do things. You've got Arnold who did, sets of 30, but then you've got others that do sets of 5x5, right? So there's many different ways. And you have to find what you like best, what you're going to stick with, what you work best on, and what works for you, right? I respond very well to high reps. I'll do sets of 15, sets of 20, and I see great results from it. But I also do low rep sets, right? I do singles, I do doubles, I do triples, 5s. So experiment with it, see what you like, see what you respond best to, and there's many different ways for muscle tissue to get bigger, to put on mass, right? So there's many ways to go about it, right? There's the bodybuilding way, there's the non-bodybuilding way, right? I mean, I don't know how to say it. Like bodybuilding, very high rep, the pump, and that's been shown in studies to produce changes to the muscle tissue and hypertrophy, the hypertrophy gains that you're looking for. But then a 5x5, a heavier 5x5 is also going to put on mass, right? So it's just, there's very different ways to do it, but there's a lot of ways that work too. So just keep that in mind. So that was kind of the training, and with that, also kind of wanted to add what I did is when you're trying to put on mass, watch what other stuff you're doing. You have to take into account like your hobbies, what other types of training you're doing. There was a time when I loved to run as well as lift. So obviously that's kind of counterproductive to go out and run 8 miles, but then try to put on mass as well, right? So just keep those things in mind as well, and kind of, if you like to do these things, maybe you shouldn't expect huge, hypertrophy and mass gains if you love to run and do Spartan races and do all those things, because it's going to be a little bit harder for you to put on mass when you're doing those type of things. So just keep that in mind. So kind of rambling, sorry, but that's how it is. So that's training. Number 3 is recovery. So recovery is going to boil down to sleep and stress levels. I found in my own training that if the sleep was really suffering, like consistently, then so was the gains, right? The progress. The training sessions weren't as well. It didn't go as well. There's going to be times, obviously, when you can't sleep as much, but the long term, you have to keep an eye on those things, right? To kind of help yourself along, because you need to sleep to make huge gains, right? Somewhat. Now, some people can get less sleep and do fine. Some people have to get a little more too. There's going to be some genetic differences on that. Then number 2 is overall stress levels. Now, stress levels can have a huge impact. I know in my own training, looking back, there was times I was very stressed for other reasons in life, and it put a damper on the training. Even though I was consistent about it, it kind of slowed things down a little bit, because I was constantly worried. I was constantly stressed about, whatever it happened to be, whether it was school, financial stuff, whatever it happened to be. It put a damper on things and hurt the overall progress. But recovery is important, guys, so just keep that in mind as well. So that is kind of the 3 main points of how I put on, however many pounds that is. So yeah, a lot of weight. you know, just keep in mind that this change happened over a long period of time. This was 6 years ago when I was 125 pounds, and I got up to 181, but I'm at 165 now. But the muscle mass difference, there's a very big difference. It took a long time. No, it doesn't have to take 6 years to put on that amount of weight, right? But there was times that, like I said, I focused on running. I tried CrossFit out. I tried these other things that were counterproductive. I had other goals that I wanted to do as well. Like I ran races. I did these things that also kind of slowed things. And there was times that I lost weight and then I put weight back on. So it wasn't like it took 6 straight years of grinding to get there. I mean, I was grinding, but in different ways. So, I mean, I went from 165 to 181 in 3 months, right? But I did put on a lot of fat mass. So just keep that in mind. It's all relative, but that's just my story of how I put on mass. Now, again, other things work for other people. So take it or leave it how you want, and that is about it, guys. As always, if you got any questions at all, hit me up. John Pat Fitness on everything. J-Pat on Snapchat. Like, comment, subscribe if you could. Other than that, guys, have a great day. Keep chasing it. Keep making those gains.